Hi everyone and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I'll be making a little Flappy Bird's cake which has been requested by many of you. Now this little bird has caused quite a bit of frustration in my house and I wonder if perhaps in yours too. So let's get started. I've got here a template and you can get a copy of this in the description box below. I've got a big fondant roller, my small fondant roller, I've got my pizza cutter, my X-Acto blade and a little palette knife. I've got my offset spatula, a sharp knife and a pair of scissors. I've also got a square cutter and you can pick these up from any cake store. I'm going to be using either one of these two squares, but you might have a different square cutter. I've also got a cloud cutter and some of us may not have that, so I'm going to show you how to make clouds out of this flower cutter. I've got a little bit of chocolate ganache here. I've got a piece of wax paper that we're going to use to cut out our squares. And I've got a board which I've already covered in blue fondant. I've also got some white fondant here today, a little bit of green and a little bit of yellow, as well as a little bit of black and a tiny bit of red. And last but not least, I'm using a 6-inch round cake. So to start off, we just need to place the template onto the cake and using the sharp knife, holding it vertically at all times to make sure we get straight edges, is just cut around all of the edges of the template. Now while I'm cutting away at this cake, I've just put a little clip of someone who lives in my house and just showing you how frustrating this game really can be. I must say though, my highest is only 2, so I'm sure a lot of you have got a better score than that. So now once we've finished cut the cake, we're going to cover the cake in some chocolate ganache. And I'm going to use my offset spatula to drizzle the ganache over the cake and smooth it as best I can over the top of the cake. And to do the sides, I found my little palette knife was come in really handy because it's small and pointy and really gets into all of those rigid edges which we've cut. So once this is fully covered with the ganache, I'm going to pop it in the fridge for about 15 minutes to set. While the cake is setting, I'm just going to make some decorations for my board. I'm going to pop my template on the cake and decide whereabouts I want to put those pillars or those post things that the bird's got to fly through. And you can put these wherever you want. So basically all I'm going to do is roll out my green fondant and cut out 2 rectangular pieces and position them on the cake. I'm going for top and bottom. And then I'm going to cut out 2 other little rectangular narrow pieces of fondant to position at the tops of these pillars. Now if you've got a cloud cutter, you can cut your fondant using this cutter and position it wherever you like, but if not, I'm going to show you how to use this round pedal cutter to create a cloud. So once I've rolled out my fondant and cut out 2 shapes, I'm going to use my sharp knife to cut these 2 flower shapes in half. And I'm going to cut one straight through 2 center points and then another through one of the round parts. So I've got 2 sets of different shaped clouds. Once I'm happy with the positioning of all my pieces on the board, I'm going to stick them on with some water and a paintbrush. Now that my fondant has set, I'm going to smooth over the surface so that we get a nice smooth finish to the ganache. So using some boiling water, I'm just placing my 2 spatulas into the water and drying off any excess and slowly smoothing out all of the edges. Now as frustrating as this game is, this process is a little bit frustrating, so you do need to have a little bit of patience and go through all of those little side edges that we've cut. Now I've rolled out my white fondant and I want to try and achieve some sharp edges with the white fondant on top. So I'm going to place the template onto the fondant and trace around it with the X-Acto blade, cutting all of those corners nice and sharply and then carefully positioning this white piece of fondant onto the top of the cake. Now to cover the sides, I'm going to cut a series of rectangles in different shapes, just measuring up against the cake and carefully adhering them to the side of the cake and using my fingers to blend the top and sides of the fondant together. Once I've finished this, I'm going to carefully transfer the cake onto the board. Now the first thing I'm going to work on is the lips. So I'm just going to cut the template out around the edges of the red component and also the yellow of the bird. While we're creating this cake, we really want to focus on creating a pixelated look to the bird because after all it is a digital image of a bird and I'm not really after any smooth round edges. So now with my template of the lips, I've just rolled out some red fondant and I'm just going to trace over it with my X-Acto blade and position it on the cake using the template as a guide. I'm going to do the same thing for the yellow section of the bird and adhere them to the cake. Now I'm going to roll out my black fondant using my wax paper to rest it on, and grabbing my square cutter, I'm going to press down and just gently rub it on the wax paper so I get a nice sharp cut and cut out a whole lot of little black squares. These are going to be my little black pixels. Once I've got all my squares cut out, I'm just going to use my template as a guide and wet the cake with a little bit of water on my paintbrush and adhere all of these little black squares, acting as the black pixels, all around the cake. Do your best to try and keep them as straight as possible and lined up, perhaps using your small palette knife to help you line them up. And once you're done, you'll have achieved this digital looking pixelated little Flappy Bird cake. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. If you did, please give it a like and share it with your friends. I love getting your feedback, so don't forget to leave me some comments in the section below, or find me on Facebook at Creative Cakes by Sharon. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more creative cake tutorials, and thanks for watching. Take care.